Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guests, Katherine Wilemon and Dr. Larry Sperling. And they're here to share with us Family Heart Foundation's screening and support. So did you know that there's a way to detect if you're at risk for the leading cause of death in America? Well, today's guests are going to share with us just that. So Katherine Wilemon is the founder and CEO of the Family Heart Foundation, a leading research and advocacy nonprofit dedicated to reducing heart disease and stroke by advancing the understanding and care of genetic high cholesterol. Dr. Larry Sperling serves as the Chief Medical Officer for the Family Heart Foundation and is focused on research, advocacy, and education. Dr. Larry Sperling is the founder and was the director of the Heart Disease Prevention Center at Emory, where he is currently the professor in preventative cardiology at the Emory University School of Medicine and the professor of global health at the Laurence School of Public Health. So welcome to the show, Katherine Wilemon and Dr. Larry Sperling.
Thanks, Marianne, and we're glad to join you on this moment.
What an honor it is to have the both of you here and to talk about this. Dr. Sperling, can you share about the impacts of cardiovascular disease and how that is affecting Americans?
Yeah, this is a really important question. Most Americans are at risk for heart disease and stroke. In fact, heart disease is the number one cause of death in our nation. I think we'll have about 10 minutes together for this moment. And for your listeners, we know that every 33 seconds, an American will die of heart disease. So in our 10 minutes together, 20 Americans will die, our family members, our neighbors, our friends, and our coworkers. But I'm a preventive cardiologist, and I've dedicated my career to heart disease prevention. In fact, like most other American families, heart disease runs in my family. But we know that over 80% of heart-related events are preventable. And they're preventable by awareness of our heart disease risk factors.
Wow, that is, when you put it in perspective like that, it's stunning what those numbers are. What could we do, Dr. Sperling, to combat heart disease?
Yeah, there's a lot we can do to combat heart disease and prevent heart disease. I mentioned awareness of our risk factors. This is a first step. When we're aware, we can address these risk factors in partnership with our physician or clinical team. What we'd like to speak to you about and your listeners are two risk factors, the LDL cholesterol. And we know by lowering the LDL cholesterol, we can directly lower heart disease risk, the risk of heart attacks and strokes. The other risk factor that most of your listeners are unlikely aware of is called lipoprotein(a) or Lp(a). Lp(a) is a genetically determined risk factor in 1 out of every 5 people worldwide. We call Lp(a) the triple threat because it increases the risk of inflammation, increases the likelihood of cholesterol building up in our arteries, and it increases the risk of thrombosis. This is blood clotting. So that's what acutely causes a heart attack or stroke. Now, the good news is that through a simple blood test, each and every one of us can be aware of our LDL and our Lp(a). And through awareness, we can be empowered. And in partnership with our doctor or clinical team, these are actionable pieces of information that can make a difference in our lives and the lives of our family.
My goodness, it's just amazing what we can do, and it just being able to have tests that we can run right now that can tell us what our risk factor is so just important. And it has me thinking, Katherine, your foundation, Family Heart Foundation, works to fight this epidemic. Can you share with us about your foundation and what it does?
Sure. So the Family Heart Foundation is a public charity. We're a research and advocacy organization. And some of what we do is direct services to the American public. What we know is that LDL cholesterol is highly undermanaged. So even though it's often screened for, most people don't know what their own LDL cholesterol is or what the safe zone is for them with their LDL cholesterol. And we know that less than 5% of Americans have ever been screened for high lipoprotein(a), despite it being so common. So part of what we do is really help people along the journey of getting a diagnosis. And we just recently launched a program called Cholesterol Connect, where we're offering an at-home test and care navigators who can help people understand what those test results mean. And it's free of charge. And we're really excited about it because we know that these two conditions go so underdiagnosed. And this is an opportunity for everyone to be empowered and to partner with their clinical team to make sure they get the best care they deserve.
Well, what a great opportunity to find out more about our personal health. And Catherine, why are you so passionate about this cause?
I had a heart attack at the age of 39, and I feel quite lucky to still be here. And it took me even years after my heart attack to understand what had driven this early cardiovascular disease. I have two genetic conditions. One is called familial hypercholesterolemia, which causes very high LDL cholesterol from birth. And the other is elevated lipoprotein(a), which, as Dr. Sperling mentioned, is primarily genetically determined. So I've really made it my life's work to try to help others to get a diagnosis before they have cardiovascular disease or to prevent a second heart attack or stroke if, in fact, they've already had one.
Wow, that must have been a real shock of having that happen at such a young age. Because when people think of, folks having heart attacks, they think that they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s and older.
It was, and it was challenging as a younger woman to get the care that I needed because people often think of cardiovascular disease as just a disease of the older population and often underestimate cardiovascular disease in women. So it put me kind of at triple risk. And again, I'm so glad to be here, but people do have to advocate for their own health and they need to be empowered with knowledge.
So, Dr. Sperling, can you elaborate on the role of genetics in cardiovascular disease and how that impacts us?
Yeah, that's a really powerful question for your listeners. Genetics for many people can be strong determinants of our risk. Now, coming back to the two risk factors we're speaking about, there is a genetic condition, and Catherine's already mentioned this, that's present in 1 out of every 250 people. It's called familial hypercholesterolemia. It can be easily diagnosed by measuring the LDL cholesterol and taking a family history. We should all ask our family members. It was just Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. But we should ask our family questions about history of diseases that run in the family. We often don't do that. And the Lp(a) is also a powerful genetic risk factor. And we can't always combat our genes by eating better and exercising more. That's an important message, is we should be focused on health behaviors, but by understanding our genetic predisposition, we can get a jump on our genes. And if we get an early start, we can really counter a lot of our genetic, we'll call it predetermined risk. And so we are not determined necessarily to have a heart attack or stroke at an early age.
Well, that I think is just having more information is always so empowering. Catherine, with your organization, have there been roadblocks in educating the public about this?
Well, people think they understand LDL cholesterol, and I think it's highly underestimated as the risk or the threat, really, that it is to public health. And people have never heard of lipoprotein(a). So people think they already know LDL cholesterol and they underestimate how powerful it is. And people have never heard of LP little a. So really, those are the two battles that we fight on a daily basis, and getting people to take cardiovascular disease seriously as a whole. If I had told you that I was a survivor of cancer, does that make you sit up and listen more? It shouldn't, any more than me being a survivor of cardiovascular disease and a heart attack. So I think that's one of the biggest roadblocks that we face, is getting people to understand how prevalent and how serious cardiovascular disease is, and then what they can do in the face of that threat.
So where can people go to get more information and maybe to share information with their doctors, or just to be able to order the test? Because I know you mentioned at-home test.
So people can always go to familyheart.org. We have so much terrific information, both for physicians as well as the lay public, about these genetic causes of cardiovascular disease and the burden of LDL cholesterol. And if they'd like to order one of these free screening tests, they can go to cholesterolconnect.org.
Well, my goodness, Katherine and Dr. Larry Sperling, it has been such an honor to spend this time with you. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I hope this moment together can save lives of your listeners.
Well, we hope so too. Make sure to visit familyheart.org to order your free test kit to see if you're at risk for cardiovascular disease. Again, that's familyheart.org. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.